Hi, this video blog is just to give you a sense of how I think things are going in class and provide a little bit more direction for you as you work through this week online. And this is the week that you're working on developing your topic question in more detail. But I've also asked you to think about a fundamental question for your research, which is why do you care and why should we care about what it is that you're studying? And this is an important question. It's a question that it's important to ask in the beginning, but it's also important to ask at the end. So when I'm asking you, why do you care, we're starting to set a foundation for talking about your own personal bias, but also getting a sense of where your passion comes from here. Is it something that you experienced when you were working in the classroom, or as an administrator that you were really successful with, or maybe didn't go so well? Is it something that you read? Did you have an experience in a classroom that sparked your interest? Or is it just something that's in the educational ether that never seemed quite right for you? Or do you intuitively and through your experience really believe that something works, but people aren't using it, and you want to try to build a case? And it's important to know that, because as you go into your research, we often talk about being the dispassionate observer as a researcher. But in reality, that's not really the case. In most cases, when you're doing this type of research, you're researching something that you're experiencing, and you have ideas about it, and you might even have very strong ideas about it. So it's important to understand those ideas and figure out how they're influencing our research. The other question is, why should we care? And that gets at what is it that you're going to come up with at the end that we're going to be able to use. How is it going to change the way we think about the work of schools? How is it going to affect the way we go about our daily practice? Does it have policy implications? What's the takeaway? And while there are going to be lots of takeaways that you don't even know yet because you're just getting started, you should, I think, have a reasonable idea of what it is you're hoping to accomplish with your research. Establishing at least a beginning idea of answers to both those questions are going to be helpful in guiding where you go next. So that's a big focus. And then another thing you should be doing this week is continuing to go through previous dissertations, to go through the peer review research, and to begin to refine your research questions. So last week we were just picking a broad topic, but this week you're starting to ask specific questions. And we laid out some examples of those questions in our last Illuminate class. So you should start to detail those a little bit further, and to begin to collect research that's interesting, that seems to be a good fit. Next week in our Illuminate class, we're going to spend time talking in detail about what to do with that research. How do you organize it? How do you choose what to select for your study and what to eliminate? How do you present that organization in your paper, so you know early on what the deliverable is going to be and how you can fit this research into that deliverable. If you're just getting started, then just right now, just beginning to flesh out that topic in more detail is appropriate, and that's where you should be. If you're bringing a project that you've worked on in a previous class into this class, then now is the time that you're revisiting those questions, those sub-questions that are driving the structure of your paper, and looking at really two things. One, are those the appropriate questions? Or now that you're reviewing the research and looking back, are there other questions you should have asked, or should you have asked them slightly differently? And two, where are the gaps in your own research? You will have done some well, and you will have answered some questions less well, maybe even quite poorly. So you have to evaluate that and then start to develop a plan for shoring up those gaps, and then begin to think about, what is it that I haven't even answered through the lit review that I want to answer in my research? So what are the next questions? And then as we move further along in the semester, you'll start to develop a game plan for how you can fill that gap with original research. So I'm looking forward to seeing your responses on the discussion board this weekend. And as always, if you have any specific questions about the course, about your own work, I encourage you to open a new thread on the discussion board, ask your question there, so that everybody can see your question and see my answer, and it simulates the in-class experience a little bit, because we need to learn from each other during this process. So if it's an email that you really feel needs to be on an email just between the two of us, kind of question that you would wait till after class to ask, or in office hours to ask, that's fine. You can send me an email. But if you feel comfortable having the rest of the class hear it, I really encourage you to use the discussion board so that we can all learn from each other. Look forward to seeing you online, and good luck this week.